Hello, welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and another edition of What is in Our Stand today. Today I'm going to go over what is one of the most requested tutorials that I get in the shop environment. I don't usually get it so much on YouTube because my channel is so small still that I'm not getting these requests. However, it is an important skill and something that every rider should know before heading out to the road. So before we get started, if you would please subscribe to the channel, like it, and hit that, or like the video and hit that notification bell. So what we're going to talk about today is flat repair on the road. What I have here is just one of my bikes. I just want to use this as a prop to get the wheels off, to show you how to do that. Once I get the wheels off, we're going to use a different wheel to do the flat repair. Reason being, these are set up tubeless, and so that's another video that's going to be on the wish list of things to do. So let's start with, how do you get the wheels off of the bike? So the first thing is, we're going to simulate a front flat, and then we'll go towards the rear flat. And in my opinion, taking the wheels off, there's the best way to do it, and then there's not so best. Okay, so first things first, I want you to take a look here, a closer look. This is a quick release. This bike up here has a through axle, and we can discuss that at another time. But here we go. We have a quick release lever, and what I tell people is to just have one system, one process, and if you do it the same every time, you just won't miss anything. So I like to start from the top, work my way down. So the first thing you need to do is you need to open up your brake caliper so that the wheel can come in and out. Then the next thing you need to do is just open up your quick release and then reach over and start to unscrew your quick release. And that should be enough to get the wheel out. So that's the front wheel, and that's fairly simple. Sometimes the rear wheel can be a little bit difficult. So this is what I suggest that you do for the rear wheel. So if you notice now, I've got it in a climbing cog, so all the way up on the cassette. But what I recommend that you do to remove the wheel is to just shift it to your smallest cog. And you'll see now that the wheel is in the smallest cog. This is the easiest way I've ever found to remove a wheel. So now we'll start from the top and work our way down again. Squeeze your caliper in this case, release that. Some brakes have just a little lever here. And then just open up your rear skewer. And in most cases, the wheel is going to just fall out once you pull back on the rear derailleur. So there's no point. At no point are you actually touching the chain and getting your hands dirty. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to simulate on this wheel, because this is a tubed setup that was tubeless, so we're not going to use those wheels for this demonstration. And now we're going to simulate that we got our flat. All right, so I'm going to release the air out of the tire. And this process will be the same for a front or a rear flat. Okay, so if you have gotten a flat, a lot of times what will happen is you might get a puncture, but there'll still be air in the tire. So you've got to get the rest of the air out of the tire, and you just push on that valve. I roll it a little bit and squeeze as much air as possible. That'll make getting the tire off much easier. Okay, so we've got that. Now we've got our toolkit that we've had on the back of our saddle. We open up our toolkit. And we dump out our stuff and make sure that we have everything. So we need a tire lever to break the bead of the tire. we're going to need a new tube, and we're going to need a method of inflation. So the most convenient and the quickest way to inflate a tube on the roadside is with CO2. However, you'll also see a mini pump being used, or a frame pump, which is about that much longer, and it can be mounted somewhere on your bike, usually underneath your top tube. Okay, so by the way, a mini pump is very good because you may go out and you may get 2-3 flats in one day and you'll be out of CO2 cartridges. So it's nice to have a plan B. Also, when inspecting the tube, it's also nice to have a way to put air into your tube without using your CO2 cartridge. But we'll talk about that at another time as well. Okay, so now you've taken all the air out, you've laid out your flat repair stuff, you've got everything, and you're ready to start. Now, most tubes or most tube installations will have a little jam nut there, so you'll take that guy off first. And what I suggest is break the bead on the whole tire first. And this is what I mean by breaking the bead. So you'll push on it and you'll start to see the, in this case, tubeless tape, because I've run these wheels tubeless before as well. And you just break the bead all the way along with your fingers, your thumbs, just push, 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 and then turn it around the other side, push, 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 right? And so what that allows you to do is then you have your tire lever, and all you do is pull back, and see that bead right there? You want to hook this guy right underneath that. Now, I've also seen where people use 2 tire levers, and they'll grab that bead and then hook the tire lever there, and then a few inches later they'll put another tire lever. I find that that's harder than it needs to be, and 1 tire lever is basically all you need. So what I like to do is pull back, grab that tire bead, and then I put the wheel up against my chest, or against the ground and my chest, and I pull back towards me. I feel I have a lot more leverage if I pull back towards me than if I push away. So lock the tire up against my chest and pull back, okay? And so you're able now to break the bead from the wheel, and then just now go the rest of the way around like that, okay? So remember that we're simulating that we have a flat. This tube is serviceable, but for the time being, we're gonna imagine that this is a bad tube. So push up on the valve, pull up on it. This is now your bad tube. Now, generally speaking, you want to put your valve and your label together, right? And this is because, let's just say you have the time, you are patient enough, or maybe you've run out of CO2s and tubes and you've got 1 shot left to get home. Well, if you have a mini pump like this and you can't find anything in the tire, you may want to inflate your tube a little bit and see if you can find where that puncture is. So that puncture, let's just say, is here. Well, you know the valve is here, you know the puncture is here, so all you have to do now is focus your attention. Right here's the valve and label. All you have to do now is focus your attention right here, because you know that's where the tube is punctured. So a lot of times you may get all kinds of different things that puncture your tire. It could be a goat head, it could be a thorn, it could be a small sliver of glass. It could be also, car tires leave behind these little tiny wires, and they puncture your tire, and sometimes they're still there, and sometimes they fly off. So you're sometimes wondering, I have felt inside here, I keep feeling, I don't see anything, I don't feel anything. And it's possible it's already flown off, and that happens a lot. So let's simulate that we are looking for that thing that might have punctured your tire. So you run your fingers along the inside, and always start and end everything at the valve stem, because then you have a known point where you're going and inspecting and inspecting and inspecting. Okay? Sometimes what I've done is, if I've looked 2 or 3 times around the tire, I still can't find it, then what I do is I take the tire off and I turn it inside out, because I want to make sure that whatever punctured my tire, I make every effort to find it and to remove it from the tire before I put a tube in. Okay, so we're just going through and checking the inside of the tire, because sometimes you may see it right here, just a tiny little bit poking out, but you won't see it on the outside of the tire. Okay, so now we've gone through the whole thing, we don't see anything, and we want to put the tire back on. So we want to give it shape again. Okay, and now we go to our rim. Now there's the valve hole, and here is the label. So we're going to put that back on again. By the way, if you're using some brands of tires, for example, this Continental 4000 and 5000, they are installed with a direction arrow. Easiest way to remember for the Continental tires is there's a like a dorsal fin of a shark, and so if the shark is going in that direction, the dorsal fin usually faces to the rear. And when you put on your wheels, the logo, when you're straddling the bike, you should be able to read the logo. So we know that this is the non-drive side. We know that this is the drive side. Wheel is going that way. That means that the shark fin is going to the back. Okay, so we're going to put one side of the tire on. And we try to line up our label. Now, with some tires and some rim combinations, it is very difficult to put on a tire, or maybe you are lacking some hand strength or dexterity. Maybe it's cold out and your hands are just really hard to manipulate the tire and the tube. So that can happen, and sometimes you may need a tire lever. All right, so we're going to take our tube. Now, generally, I take the tubes out of a box, the box that they come in, and I wrap them with electrical tape. Now, there's a dual purpose for this, and that is, what we haven't talked about is, we were looking for debris, but sometimes you get a cut on your tire, and it could be from a piece of glass, could be from a sharp rock. And if you have some electrical tape or even duct tape, you can take that tape and just place it inside. Let's say we have a cut right here. You can just place that inside and maybe do multiple layers of it. And then you would put the tube inside. So I'm going to simulate. This would be the tube. This would be taped onto the tire. And that little cut is now covered by the tape. Put the tube inside there, and as that tube swells up, it won't want to go through the hole, which then exposes that tube against the ground. Okay, so we don't have a cut, but if we did, we could use that. We could use duct tape as well. We could use a wrapper from our food that we've been eating along the ride. there's also a tire boot. Yep, a tire boot from Park Tool. You could also carry that around with you, put that in there like that, and then put the tube in. Okay, so now one of the things that I see some people not do is they don't put air in the tube. So you could use your pump, you could use your CO2. However, easiest way I've found to do it is to just use your breath. Now, this, we need a little bit more air. What we're trying to do is just give the tube some shape, because we're going to put the valve in. Okay, and then we're just going to put the tube into the tire, and if it has a little bit of air in it, it has a little bit of shape to it, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. So that's the first phase, is just kind of set that in there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to start pinching the tire and pushing it inside of the rim hook. All right, so the bead of the tire is now going to get hooked by the rim. There are different ways to do this, and just recently I've started doing it. After so many years, I started doing it this way, where I leave the valve stem for last, and there's some good logic to it, and I'll explain here in a minute. So now you just push, and you just pinch and push and pinch and push. Now the thing is that little bit of air that you put in the tube allows it to fall inside the rim bed, and then it's much easier to just push the tire around. Now we've got it all the way on, except for this little part here. Now sometimes if it's just too hard, you might use a tire lever. I strongly advise against it, because sometimes you'll pinch the tube and, well, you're back to square one. You got to do it over again. And if that was your last tube, then you may have to call the significant other or Uber. So here's the thing, and as to why I've started to do it the valve last. To prevent anything from being pinched, I can now manipulate that tube so that it doesn't get caught between the rim bed and the bead of the tire. So the best way to do this last 6 inches is push down towards this section here. And if you push and pull and push and pull, it's really much easier to just bring the tire up and over. Now, I suggest that you use the palm of your hand to roll. When you roll, you hold it in place, then you roll again, you hold that in place, and then you roll again, and there it goes. It's in there. And as I mentioned before, now I can push up on that valve, and I make sure that in that very last section, I am not pinching the tube. Now, this being a yellow base tape, or in this case, this is rim tape for tubeless, it makes it very obvious if I have the tube pinched by the tire. Go all the way around. Now remember, we did one side without the tube, so we don't really have to check that side. We only have to check this side. All right, we've got it on there. We've checked it. Now we take our CO2 cartridge and many different forms of inflators. We can cover that at another time. There's a puncture pin here, and this has a nice rubber grommet to go around your tube. So this is the no frills, no moving parts type of inflator. So we're going to screw that in, and at a certain point, once you've screwed it all the way in, it actually punctures that CO2. Make sure you open your valve. I see this often on the road when people are in a hurry. And we're going to take our CO2, and the way this CO2 cartridge, or I should say inflator, works is as you loosen it and tighten it, loosen it, tighten it, that's how you modulate how much air is going through. So first thing you want to do is pop a little bit of air in there so that you're able to inspect how the bead is going in. And then, once you've done that, then you have your fully inflated tire and you're ready to roll. Okay, thanks so much for watching. This has been a flat repair class, and if you liked it, please like, subscribe, and share this with some of your friends. All right, thank you. We'll see you up the road.